Joining us now is Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. Chief, I know it's been a long 24 hours for you. Thank you for taking time to speak with us. What's your reaction first to just what we're seeing this morning, these protests that have turned heated and have led to some clashes with law enforcement?
Good morning, Anna. Thank you. Well, yesterday, Minneapolis police officers were not present, obviously, during the incident, but responded very quickly once there was a 911 call reporting a shooting. And our officers performed incredibly well, trying to de-escalate what was rapidly becoming a very, very tense situation. And they managed to secure the crime scene to ensure that we are able to preserve evidence, because that is what is absolutely necessary to ensure that there can be a full and thorough investigation that our victim, the deceased in this case, deserves, as well as their family, as well as the community in general. That being said, once the crime scene was over, probably the last 10 or 15 minutes, there were some people in the gathering that then became aggressive towards our officers and began throwing large chunks of ice, other projectiles. Some of our squad cars were damaged, and a window was broken that gave one of our officers a minor concussion. That being said, our officers continue to do what they do every day, and that is de-escalate the situation and do everything possible to restore the peace. During the night, there were probably a few thousand protesters that gathered at a vigil, and then a few different groups that splintered off around that. But those activities remained peaceful.
Chief, Senator, there's distrust in the community when it comes to federal authorities leading this investigation.
Well, I think the city council members and our elected state representatives are simply stating reality, and that's the reality that we have been existing under, and just a really, really tense situation that has been building for a number of weeks. That's why I have been saying repeatedly that I was afraid that we were going to have a tragedy happen in the city, and that we might have the potential for civil unrest yet again 5 years later. And unfortunately, that is exactly what has occurred. And I would hope that most good people, all good people in our country, can acknowledge that the loss of human life is a tragedy. But the reality is that law enforcement agencies should be learning organizations. We have a professional responsibility to our community, to the people that we serve, to try and learn from our mistakes. And that being said, law enforcement in general, for many years now, has had an emphasis on policy and training to de-escalate whenever possible, to put the utmost priority on the sanctity of human life, and to not unnecessarily engage in tactics that are questionable or may unnecessarily place law enforcement officers' lives in jeopardy or the safety of the community in jeopardy as well.
So, Chief, what key questions do investigators need to answer about this incident?
So the investigators need to follow all of the facts and all of the evidence to its logical conclusion. And that being said, I have full confidence that that is what is underway. That is why we responded and secured the scene as quickly and as best that we could. And that is what is absolutely necessary. Look, I think the ultimate question will be determined based upon the law and in light of this particular agency's training and this particular officer's experience. Is it objectively reasonable, based upon the facts and the evidence, that a reasonable officer with the same level of training experience had in that moment? Is it objectively reasonable for the use of deadly force? That's the question in any investigation where an officer fires their weapon.
You warned your officers last month that you would fire them if they don't intervene when ICE uses excessive force. But how involved are your officers in surveilling what ICE is doing? Does your department need to be actively monitoring them?
Well, the reality is the Minneapolis Police Department today still remains seriously understaffed. This is a police department that typically had 900 officers going into 2020. Over 500 of them have left since then. And today we are staffed with about 600 sworn members, and we have a job to do every single day, and that is to address violence and serious street crime in our city, respond to domestic violence, investigate those crimes, those types of things. So this heightened activity under so much tension that causes at times literally chaos in the street just adds something else to our plate, responsible for creating. But whenever chaos like this erupts, it is us who come into those situations. And it is our men and women that then have to step in between, in the middle, and so oftentimes then become the object of people's frustration. So it is a challenging time for sure, but this is an incredibly resilient police department. And I can't tell you how proud I am of how remarkably well our officers perform under the most extreme, challenging, and probably the most scrutinized circumstances that there is in policing today.
Chief, at least one city council member said this federal agent involved in the shooting should be arrested. Would your officers carry out that order if prosecutors filed charges?
If there was an arrest warrant issued by a judge, of course, our police officers are responsible for enforcing a warrant or an order from the court, just like we would any other.
The Trump administration said about what happened yesterday that rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle. Are those the same reports you have, that there were rioters?
The reports that I have in this particular circumstance is that there was a woman who was at one point blocking the street. But what I also know, and I don't know about this specific person, but what I think everybody knows that's been happening here over the last several weeks is that there have been groups of people exercising their First Amendment rights. And by that I mean they have the right to peaceably assemble, they have the right to observe, to live stream and record police activity, and they have the right to protest and object to it. But the line is people must be able to exercise those First Amendment rights lawfully and to do it safely. And so that is where the line is. But again, as I've said repeatedly over and over and over again, I have seen this tension continuously building. And I think it is our obligations as law enforcement leaders, to be the grown-ups in the room and to look at this and say, hey, maybe we need to reevaluate our tactics. Maybe we need to do things to ensure that we are not unnecessarily putting lives at risk, both the lives of our law enforcement officers who are serving, as well as the lives of people in the community. Because as best I could tell, all this was initially about was a middle-aged woman in her car blocking the street.
Bottom line, when it comes to your job of trying to keep Minneapolis safe, are all of these federal agents there for these immigration operations helping or hurting that effort right now?
Look, I am not going to